welcome to Pleasureology Island. I'm Free Thought Steve, the lone pleasureologist, the happy realist, the sex-positive psychologist, and director of Euphoria at the Post-Christian Euphoria School of Pleasureology Island. Now, as the son of an evangelical preacher, a fundamentalist, I was subjected to a fundamentalist upbringing. I had it imposed upon me. So I was the victim of a fundamentalist upbringing, as many of you are. Your upbringing may have been even more severe than mine. My father, fortunately, was a very kindly person, as was my mother, so I got plenty of affection from both of them. And my dad was absent a lot. So I didn't get the kind of militantly fundamentalist God versus the devil kind of upbringing that I think young people have been getting in fundamentalist families for a couple of generations now, at least since the 1980s and 90s, when evangelical fundamentalism emerged in a battle with a secular, non-religious worldview. And those of us who have moved from religion to a secular worldview need to do more than just change our intellectual thinking about religion and about God. That's very important to do that. It's very important for us to get a very clear, realistic worldview, rather than the delusional worldview that we were brought up in, where people believed that the imaginary was real. We need to move into a realistic worldview where we believe that the real is real and the imaginary is unknowable, and therefore we're not going to believe anything for certain about the unknowable. We can hope and trust that there are benevolent forces out there that we're not aware of who are helping humanity in its struggle to become safe and friendly and loving and kind and share the world in an equitable way with each other. But that basically we can't count on invisible, unknowable powers, even if they do exist. And if they do exist, we assume they're benevolent rather than malevolent. We assume that they would be on our side and helping us to be happier and live more happily. But we can't count on invisible powers to help us do what we need to do as human beings on this earth in order to get along with each other better and to enjoy our own personal lives. To be a realist is to be a humanist. To be a humanist is to not rely on magical powers that we don't know anything about. We can rely on human beings. We need to rely on the good side of human nature. Human nature has the potential to be wonderful, loving, kind, friendly, affectionate, and helpful. But it also has the potential to be very competitive, very aggressive, very hostile, and very cruel. And it's up to us to decide which side of human nature, the pro-social side or the anti-social side, is going to be dominant, is going to be helping us to create a better planet for ourselves. We need to learn to emphasize the pro-social side of ourselves, the friendly and kind side. Otherwise, we're just going to all destroy ourselves. And that may be what happens to humanity, but it won't be God's fault. It'll be humanity's fault. And it may be the fault of a humanity that continues to believe in a Jekyll and Hyde kind of God, and where you've got a dualistic worldview of God versus the devil, and some people are on God's side and everybody else is on the devil's side. This kind of dualistic mythology, if it is allowed to remain dominant in humanity will just lead to more and more wars and conflict and struggle. What we need to do is get rid of all assumptions about unknowable powers and focus on human beings and our real actions and how we can become the kind of people that we want to live with. We want to be the kind of people that we would like to have around us. But how do we change ourselves into that kind of a person if we don't already happen to be that kind of person? And if we've had a fundamentalist, dualistic upbringing that has created in our very real human nervous system and body a whole lot of anxiety and tension that is chronic tension, chronic anxiety that we're not even aware of most of the time because we've been anxious so long that it just totally feels normal to us to be that uptight and that anxious. And that's exactly the way our parents are. The fundamentalist parents who have been imposing their mythology on us, they are uptight, they are nervous, they are anxious, they are completely armored emotionally, and they are locked in to their worldview, and they can't see things any other way than they do because it would be too scary for them to see things in a different way. And that's why my first experience with LSD was, for me, an extremely positive experience because it allowed me to calm down. It allowed me to say, okay, I don't have to be anxious all the time. There is a possibility for me to be calm instead of anxious. I didn't realize how anxious I was before. I just didn't even realize that until here I am on LSD and I'm calm. I actually feel safe. I feel like everything's fine. I feel like I don't have to worry about anything, you know? And that's a fabulous feeling. And I don't like the way that I've been feeling anxious all the time without realizing it. So maybe I can try to do something to have a better feeling inside. That was what my first LSD experience gave me. It loosened everything up. I was able to look at the world in a non-dualistic way, in a non-scary way, and see the universe as being just a beautiful place to be and not hostile to me in any way. I could feel like there's no hostile elements out there at all in the universe that are against me. The universe, you know, has no enmity at all for me. It's a beautiful planet that we live on. We're surrounded by beauty whenever we get out into nature and look around ourselves. When we can go to a garden and see the beauty of a little garden, and hopefully have birds come in there and butterflies and moths and stuff. And whenever we can connect with the beauty of the world and see that it's a beautiful planet we live on, and the psychedelics can really open our eyes and allow us to see that really clearly, more clearly than we ever could before, that can give us a sense of, wow, that Christian God is totally not corresponding to this beautiful universe that seems to be here. You know, that Christian God has a mean side to him, and I don't see that, you know, in the beauty of the universe. So the important thing that I recognized was that leaving Christianity is more than just changing my intellectual view, my philosophy about life. More than that, it's learning how to feel good, because it doesn't do you any good if you've got a realistic philosophy of life, but you still don't feel good inside, if you're not capable of enjoying life. And why is it that we're not capable of enjoying life? The clue for me was when I read the work of Wilhelm Reich, or Wilhelm Reich, R-E-I-C-H, the Austrian psychologist, the first of the sex-positive psychologists. When I read Reich's work, he talked about armoring, that we are all armored, and being armored prevents us from expressing our emotions. Being armored is being emotionally inhibited, because in fact, in our society, we are taught as children, don't express your emotions, don't let go, be quiet, keep your emotions inside, particularly if they're anger or sadness or whatever. So Reich felt that the key to both feeling good and being able to experience more expansive sexual orgasms, which he wanted people to have because he wanted people to be able to satisfy their natural sex drive with a good, powerful orgasm. He said the key to feeling good emotionally and having better orgasms and having a better character, a better personality with other people, the key is catharsis of emotions, getting rid of those emotions that we've been holding in and letting all that emotional energy out, and then we're going to feel much better. Now, I knew about that theory. I didn't know how to do it. But then I went to that drama camp up at Pinecrest Lake in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and I learned just physical loosening up exercises. And I didn't learn them as a way of emotional release, but it turned out that they were good for that. It turned out that those physical relaxation exercises improved my emotional mood simply because they made my body feel better. It meant I was tense. My whole body was tense. And that's this armoring that Reich was talking about. And tension is what we learn from a Christian upbringing, from an upbringing that demands that we achieve highly in school, that we do well in school, and that we do well in life. We get out there in the competitive capitalist world and prove our worth by being able to compete with other people in the so-called free market. The free market, the market's free, but human beings are all slaves to it. We're slaves. It's only the market that's free. But we have to, work day in and day out just to stay alive. But anyway, all of these pressures make us armored, make us tense. And these muscle loosening exercises were loosening up my emotional inhibitions as well. And then when I got high on cannabis, the emotions could come surging out more easily. And it wasn't just me, because it was the whole group of kids that was up there. We'd been doing these exercises for 3 or 4 weeks, and we'd all been straight because the teachers that were teaching the workshop said, the authorities are going to close us down if anybody uses dope here, because there's been so much drug use in previous years up here that, they've told us if that continues, they're going to just stop letting us have the summer workshop here. And so everybody was real good for about 3 or 4 weeks, and nobody was getting high. And then one guy finally said, this is bullshit. Drove down from the Sierra Nevadas down to his hometown in the valley there, scored some really good hash and brought it back, and sold it to everybody there. We all got high, and that night, it was like this emotional outpouring. One of our teachers who had been teaching us these loosening up exercises. He was sitting on the floor in the middle of the main room of the conference building, and the young women who had come to the workshop were sitting there in a line waiting to talk to him, and they were all crying because they'd all gotten high after doing these exercises. The loosening up of the muscles loosened up our emotions, and the combination of them, of getting high and having this loosened up muscular armor, allowed our emotions to flow out. And these girls were telling him the story of the sad things that happened to them, in high school and as they grew up. All the lonely, sad things, the hurtful things that other people do to us, their sadness was just pouring out of them. And that was a wonderful thing. And I was, poor Paul, who with the teacher, he was just sitting there. It was a good thing that he'd already done some psychological work, and he was able to just sit there and listen to them and not get freaked out and allow them to tell him whatever they wanted to tell him. And all the girls were crying, and it was a good thing. Crying is the best thing we can possibly do. Crying is when we are most human, when we are most sensitive, most real. And crying, even though it may feel emotionally painful to remember the events and to cry and sob about those events and to try and tell them to someone else, it may be emotionally painful to do that, but if you don't resist the sobbing when your body wants to sob and release its sorrow, eventually sobbing can become like an orgasm. It can become, and it is an orgasm. Sobbing is a sadness orgasm. It's when our emotional brain is so filled with sadness energy that it can't contain it, and it just has to let it out, and it flows out in the emotional behavior of crying uncontrollably and sobbing uncontrollably. And that is an emotional reflex, just like an orgasm is an emotional reflex. And Reich's idea, Wilhelm Reich's idea, was that one essential aspect of emotional health is the ability to have these spontaneous emotional reflexes, such as having an orgasm and surrendering to the orgasm, not fighting it, but just relaxing into the orgasm and letting that emotional reflex happen. Same thing with sobbing, not trying to hold back the tears and sobs, but surrendering to them and letting the sadness energy flow out of your body. And that's catharsis. That's what the Greeks called purification, emotional purification through crying. That's why they had these competitions every year at the festival of Dionysius. They would present 3 tragedies on 3 successive nights, and whichever tragedy made the people in the audience cry the hardest won the prize, because the whole point of the tragedy was to give everybody a chance to weep for the sadnesses that they had in their own lives. People that they had lost, loved ones that they had lost, and other things that made them sad. They could sob them out all together. It was a whole group catharsis. Everybody was sobbing, and everybody was letting out their sadness energy uninhibitedly. So this was what Reich said was important for emotional health, the ability to laugh. Laughing is a humor orgasm. Every time we see something funny or somebody says something funny that we can't help laughing at, and the laughter bursts out of us spontaneously, that's a laughter orgasm. Okay? Losing your temper is a fury orgasm, an anger orgasm. All right? And that's the kind that it's better to do in a bataka battle with somebody than in real life. Anger is the one form of emotional outlet that we need to be able to control. And we can actually control it better. We can control our temper better if we have allowed ourselves to express our anger in bataka battles and gotten that anger out and felt the power of expressing that anger. Then, when we go about our lives after that, we can not lose our temper so much, because we're not carrying around a bunch of unexpressed anger that's ready to leap out at any moment at the slightest provocation. If we've already done anger catharsis and purified ourselves of the poisonous anger that is festering inside ourselves, then we're a lot more relaxed and a lot happier. But that brings me to the point of what do we do after catharsis? And that was something Wilhelm Reich didn't really talk about, because he was still struggling with finding a way to help people do catharsis because he didn't have muscle loosening up exercises to work with. He didn't have cannabis to work with. He didn't realize that you could do little role-playing theater of emotional release, set up a scene where you're getting angry at someone else and they're getting angry at you, but it's just a play acting scene, but you can get your anger out that way, or you can make a scene that's very sad where you cry. So he didn't understand about emotional theater, about cannabis, and about relaxing your muscle armor with these muscular relaxation exercises. So Reich didn't understand, he didn't know what could be done after catharsis because he hadn't found a way to trigger catharsis easily enough. So his therapy kind of hit a dead end. But I, on the other hand, was lucky enough to go through a period of catharsis of a few months, and where I was in theater and was allowed to express my emotions in this experimental play, and I was able to get high and express those emotions, let them out, and I was doing my muscular exercises. And the more I did my muscle loosening up exercises and some yoga stretches and things like that, the better I felt emotionally. Even when I wasn't doing catharsis, but just in general, I would get up in the morning, do those exercises, and it would improve my emotional energy for the day. And I wouldn't be as depressed as I was before. I'm very subject to depression. I have an emotional brain that will go into depression very easily. So that's why it was so helpful to me to find that just doing these physical exercises, a lot of deep breathing stuff, getting your system sort of moving and warming everything up and loosening up these muscle tensions created a better emotional mood. And one of the reasons I had a better emotional mood was that I could feel my body. When our body is tense, the way it is when we're armored, we can't really feel our muscles in the same way that we can after we have practiced stretching them out. And then I found, this was quite surprising to me, I found that when I would get high, I could feel my muscles much better, of course, than when I was straight. It enhanced my ability to feel my body. And now these muscles were starting to relax and loosen up. Now I could feel those muscles in a whole different way. It was like I recaptured my body because it was relaxed. And I could focus my attention, instead of having it constantly in my head and all my thoughts, I could focus my attention on the muscles of my body. I could do a body scan. I could lie down and close my eyes and practice, saying, my forehead and scalp are completely relaxed, my face is relaxed, shoulders and arms, all the way down the body. You go to each part of your body and you simply pay attention to it. And you feel that part of your body and you let it relax. This is intentional proprioception. Proprioception is self-perception. Proprius is the body, the self. Proprioception is feeling, intentionally focusing your attention on your body, feeling your muscles from head to toe, feeling each part of your body. And when I got high, not only could I feel my body, more relaxed, I could feel the parts of my body that weren't relaxed. And I would say, wow, I need to stretch those muscles a little bit more and get them really stretched out like that. Oh yeah, that feels good. So cannabis and the art of being able to pay attention to your body and notice what muscles are tense and what aren't, and then do more exercises to stretch those muscles out. And pretty soon you get your whole body relaxed. And then you do yoga breathing. This is what I used to do, was yoga breathing. Breathing down into my stomach area, up into the middle of my chest, and lifting my shoulders slightly and breathing into the upper chest, expanding my rib cage and holding that expansion, and then letting it out gently. And doing it in counts like 3 counts down into my stomach, 3 counts to the center of my chest, 3 counts to the upper chest, and then hold maybe for 6 counts, and then release and let it out for 6, 8, 9, 10 counts. Slow, deep breathing is an important way of relaxing the chest cavity, the rib cage. And anxiety comes from the word constricted, narrowed down. And it refers mostly to a feeling of constriction in the chest. And my chest was totally tight before I started doing all these exercises. I breathed very shallowly. My waist was very tight, as a way of kind of cutting myself off from my sexual feelings in some ways. I had tightened up the whole area of my pelvis and waist, and my chest would just breathe very shallowly and so forth. So learning how to breathe very deeply and do these slow yoga breaths, this is not something mystical. This is not something to get you in touch with God. This is something to get you in touch with your own body. And what I found was, after I had learned how to expand my chest, breathing down, breathing out, breathing up, holding it, and then relaxing it, my chest would relax little by little. My stomach would relax, and my rib cage would relax, and then my stomach would relax, rib cage, my upper back would relax, and finally I would get down to where my rib cage was totally relaxed. And that felt amazing. And I realized when that happened that my rib cage until then was frozen. It was expanding and contracting a little bit, but not much. And it was basically all the muscles around my rib cage were tense, and they were not just preventing my rib cage from expanding fully. Those tense muscles meant that my rib cage never relaxed completely. It was always somewhere between, in the middle, between full expansion but not relaxed. And once I learned how to relax my rib cage as well as expand it, I felt this band of anxiety around the middle of my chest dissolve. And my emotional state became much less anxious because I could feel my chest. I could feel the heart area, the lungs area. And I was in connection with it. It felt a little bit scary at first to let my chest relax completely. But it felt so good. The relaxation felt so good when I finally let go of the little bit of residual tension in my rib cage so that it was nice and relaxed and was able to fluidly expand and relax much more easily than before. Then I began to feel like, oh, I've got a chest. I feel the center of my body, the core of my body. It feels really good. I'm in touch with it. My consciousness can flow down into my body and into my chest. And this was a wonderful feeling. So after doing this yoga pranayama, they call it, which means breath exercises, after doing some nice deep breathing and relaxing the chest, then I started doing some meditation. And I learned how to do Zen meditation. And you don't have to sit in a cross-legged position with your spine straight and all the rest of that in order to meditate. Meditation is a mental thing. It's a consciousness thing. It's I do it now in a recliner chair because then I'm as comfortable as possible and I can get as relaxed as possible. The back of my neck is relaxed because my head is supported. All the muscles of my back lying in the recliner chair, my muscles are all supported. My legs are supported and my knees are slightly bent, so my lower back is nice and relaxed. My hips are relaxed. My whole body is relaxed. Then there are no distractions and I can concentrate on doing my Zen meditation. Now, Zen meditation is really the simplest thing in the world. It is not a complicated thing at all. It simply means paying attention to the present moment, to the here and now moment, and trying to let your mind be free of thoughts. It's simple, but it's not easy, okay? Because we're used to having our mind full of thoughts all the time. But Zen meditation is the art of clearing our mind of thoughts for a short period of time. Doesn't matter if it's only a few seconds, but to get your mind completely free of thoughts for a few seconds is absolutely refreshing. It's like you've been underwater all this time and suddenly your head comes up out of water and you can see everything around you very clearly. You can do Zen either with your eyes closed or with your eyes open. Zen is so useful for so many different things, and particularly to ex-Christians it's useful, because we don't want to be at the mercy of our own train of thoughts. Because our own train of thoughts can, because of all of our Christian training in the past, can easily get us into depressing, anxiety-filled trains of thought and trains of thought images in your mind. And it can really bring us down emotionally, because our emotional brain responds to the images of thinking that we put into our consciousness. When we have thought images and we visualize certain scenes happening, our emotional brain responds to those scenes and it changes our mood. So our train of thought is very important in affecting our mood. And it's important for us to learn how to cut off a train of thought that is just bringing us down and making us anxious to no good reason, particularly if it's a train of thought about the imaginary beings that religion has taught us to believe in all of our life. Those imaginary beings have a real physical existence in our own brain, in our own consciousness. That's where those imaginary beings exist. They don't exist out there in reality, but they sure as hell exist in our own brain, because we have been subjected, we've been the victims of indoctrination since childhood to believe that the imaginary is real. So Zen is really good for helping us recognize the difference between the imaginary and the real. Whatever we think is imaginary, it may relate to reality, but those thoughts are just images in our consciousness as we're thinking them. They're not actually happening. And when you learn to do Zen meditation and clear your consciousness of thought images for short periods of time, then you say, okay, now this is reality. What I'm experiencing around me right now, this is reality. What I'm looking at, what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling, this is what's real. My thoughts are just the thoughts that my mind that my brain is projecting into my consciousness. And those thoughts are making me have certain feelings because my emotional brain is responding to those thought images. But if I don't like the way those thought images are making me feel, all I have to do is learn how to stop having those images, stop that train of thought, and clear my mind, focus on reality, and then I can become emotionally calm. I look at reality and I say, wait a minute, is there anything here in my immediate reality that I need to be afraid of? I'm safe here. This is, where I'm at right here, right now, I'm safe. I don't have to be afraid of anything unless I am putting scary thoughts in my own head. And I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to be a passive victim of the thoughts that my brain wants to project into my consciousness, because my brain has been polluted my entire lifetime with imaginary images that I have been taught to believe are real. Okay? The bullshit instructors that we were given, our religious instructors who took this bullshit and made us believe that it was real, have been working on my brain for so long that my brain, is polluted with that shit. So what I'm going to do is two things. First of all, I'm going to be very clear in my own head that those bullshit ideas are just imaginary. They are imaginings about the unknowable. They are human imaginings about the unknowable. Every single religious idea is a human speculation about what we cannot know, what we cannot observe, and what we can know nothing about. But we've been taught to believe that those speculations, those guesses about the unknowable are true, are absolutely true, and we're supposed to believe them, or we don't get the approval of the people who are raising us and the people that our lives depend on. If they get mad at us and kick us out of the house, then we're in deep shit. So we have to agree with them. We have to believe what they tell us to believe, But once we become adults and say, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to believe what my parents have taught me to believe just because I'm in their power. If I've gotten out of their power, now I don't have to believe anything that they tell me. I'm going to believe what I think is true, what I think is real. And all that imaginary stuff, that's not real. And every time that shit comes into my consciousness, I'm going to identify it and say, no, that's a bullshit idea. That's a bullshit idea. That's imagination masquerading as reality. It's not reality. It's imagination with a costume on, trying to pretend to be real. And I'm no longer going to be fooled by the imaginary. I'm no longer going to submit to the dictatorship of the imaginary. That's what religion is. It's the dictatorship of the imaginary. And I am no longer going to be a subject to the dictatorship of the imaginary. I'm going to be an independent human being who makes up my own mind about what I believe and what I think is the right way to live. Now, the point of doing, one of the points of doing Zen meditation or any kind of meditation is to create a coherent field of consciousness. That is, consciousness is everything we're experiencing. And we are experiencing it from inside our brain. What we are experiencing as our consciousness is a creation of our brain. Everything that you see right now, the picture that you see of me right now, the voice that you hear, my voice, that is occurring inside your own head, inside your own consciousness. Your brain has taken visual patterns of light rays falling on your eyes, and it's taken those patterns, put them into your brain, and your brain has then recreated a visual scene in front of you. As amazing as it seems, the visual scene in front of you is a creation of your own brain occurring within your own head, occurring within your own consciousness. It's a reproduction of the outside world. And if you don't believe me, just cross your eyes. Cross your eyes and you'll see, oh yeah, I've got two images of the outside world there. That's because it's being created by my brain. I'm not seeing the actual outside world. I'm seeing a reproduction of the outside world in my brain. And the voice that you hear me when I'm speaking here, that's sound vibrations going into your ears, and they go into the auditory part of your brain, and that part of your brain produces the sound in your consciousness of my voice. It's a reproduction of my voice. It's not the actual voice. What we want to do in Zen is not only clear away, not only clear away the thought images in our consciousness that are like a ghostly film between us and the real world out there. We want to clear away that ghostly film of thought images so that we can perceive the real world clearly and directly. And that's something that the psychedelics actually do for us. They give us a brief taste of like pure Zen by allowing us to perceive the world much more vividly without this fog of thoughts in the way. At least that's been my experience. Your experience may differ. Not only are we trying to clear away the thought images in our consciousness, we are also trying to stabilize our consciousness, stabilize our focus of attention. Because until we learn to do this, our focus of attention is jumping around from one thing to another, like a monkey swinging through branches of the trees. That's why they call it monkey mind. When our attention first is over here, then it's over there, then it's over there, then it's over there. So it's very important for us to learn how to stabilize consciousness. So what I do is I take a dot and I put it on a piece of paper, or you can look at the dot at the end of a sentence or the dot over an I, it doesn't matter. You can look at any little object that is a focus for your attention and keep your eyes looking right at that little dot while you concentrate on keeping your mind free of thoughts. Keeping your mind free of thoughts so that you can see the dot and looking at the dot, then that keeps your eyes from darting around from one place to another. Your eyes are staying nice and centered. And as your eyes stay centered, you can become aware of the periphery of your consciousness, all around the edges of your field of vision. You can be aware of all that being nice and stable. Everything is stable and steady. And you can become aware of yourself sitting at the back of consciousness, like a person sitting in the back row of a theater, looking forward at your visual field, your whole visual field, like a huge movie screen there in front of you. And you can be aware of hearing sounds here or there. You can listen for sounds. The easiest way to clear our mind of thoughts is to focus on two things. One, the visual field in front of us. Make sure that we're seeing whatever's in front of us clearly without any fog of visual thought images in between. And secondly, in order to quiet our internal voice, our internal dialogue, we can listen and see what we can hear in the surrounding environment. What can you hear in your environment? Whatever you can hear there, when you listen to it and you're paying full attention to it, you have quieted the voice that your brain produces in your consciousness all the time from your language center. The language center in your brain creates this internal dialogue or chatter, the internal monologue that is going through our consciousness all the time. But when we listen, then that voice inside is silent. And so what I like to do is I have some music, and I'll put this up on the internet. This is Zen music that is nice and slow, and you try and listen to the music for a certain period of time. And there are chord changes in the music so that there are 4 chords to a cycle, and then it starts over again. So you try and listen through all 4 chords and see if you can hear the music as it's playing, the instant that it's playing. If we have thoughts going on in our head and we're trying to listen to something, but we're thinking about something else, we hear the sound, but we kind of hear it on a delay. It's like it's delayed a little bit because it's having to get through all the internal dialogue that we're doing. And we may not even hear the sound. It may be just, it's there, but we're not paying attention to it. But if we're doing Zen, then we're listening to the sound and trying to hear each note of the music the moment that it occurs, the very instant that it occurs. Our attention is focused on it. Our attention sucks in that sound the moment that it occurs, and we hear it really crisply right then and there. And I like to do that with my eyes closed most of the time because I've already learned how to stabilize my consciousness, keeping it still by looking at a dot. I learned that skill. And then after you learn that, then you can close your eyes and just listen. Keep both eyes nice and relaxed. And relaxing your eyes is a very, very important part of relaxing completely and being able to do meditation. So I do eye exercises where I follow my hand with my eyes And by doing a lot of these different movements, you can stretch out all the muscles around your eyes. There are 6 little slender muscles around each eye that move the eye in different directions. 3 pairs of muscles to move it, left and right, up and down, and to the sides. And those muscles are tense all the time. And they're armored, just like the rest of our body is armored. Our eyes, our eye muscles, are armored. That means they're chronically tense. They're tense all the time, a little bit. They never fully relax. Sometimes they get real tense, and then we have tension headaches. So learning to relax the muscles of our face and the muscles of our eyes, very, very important for having a calm emotional mood inside. And then when you do Zen meditation and you have your eyes relaxed, your eyes are actually slightly crossed. See, they would be slightly crossed like that. And your eyelids are not quite clamped shut. They're open a little bit at the bottom. So your eyelids are relaxed and your eyes are relaxed. And you just practice keeping your eyes relaxed at the same time that you're listening to whatever sounds you can hear. And if you can listen to music and see if you can follow the music, and keep your attention focused on the music. And when you find that you're thinking about something else instead, then you let go of those thoughts, you let them evaporate, and you return your attention to the music and you start following the music. Or if you don't happen to have any music at the moment, and it should be calming music. It shouldn't be hyper music. And if you don't want to listen to music, you can just listen for the most distant sound you can hear off in the environment. There's always traffic out there, or a dog barking, or something, or a siren going on. You can just listen off in the distance. And when we hear those sounds, we don't want to respond to them emotionally. We want to say just emotionally calm when we hear those sounds. I can hear something now. And you can listen to that sound until it vanishes in the distance. And by keeping your attention focused on the sound from the first moment you hear it until it fades away into the distance, that's called observing the arising and the passing away of that sound. And it's a way of learning to keep your attention focused where you want it to be. Learning how to consciously and intentionally focus your attention on just what you want to focus it on is very important for maintaining internal peace and calm. Once we learn how to create a stable field of consciousness, that we can be aware of ourselves inside that consciousness, observing that consciousness, then we can become really much calmer emotionally. And we learn how to not respond with anxiety or anger or irritability or anything else. When we hear sounds out there, we can just say, okay, that's just a sound. That's off there somewhere. That's a sound. That's a sound over there. I don't have to respond emotionally to that sound by getting anxious or anything else. I'm just listening to all those sounds, and they're just there. I'm letting those sounds be there, and I'm just being aware of my consciousness and staying as calm as I can while I am doing this Zen meditation. So Zen meditation is part of relaxing after doing catharsis. And so the emotional armor will gradually dissolve away. You've got to keep stretching out your body day after day. You have to do the catharsis and get rid of the pent-up anger and sadness and fear, and then learn to relax. And of course, nurturing affection is really, really helpful for relaxation. If you're lucky enough to have formed a tender nest of, you and two other people who have agreed to, work on becoming more emotionally calm and more emotionally sensitive and more emotionally relaxed, giving each other sandwich hugs, okay? And that's something very important I didn't mention about sandwich hugs last time I talked about them was how long they should be. Okay, a sandwich hug is not like a, hey, it's nice to see you. How are you doing? Great, good to see you. When you hug somebody, just as a greeting, that hug only lasts a second, and then you separate. A sandwich hug lasts a long time. If you got a tender nest together of you and two other people, and giving sandwich hugs is one of your main nurturing tenderness, nurturing affection exercises, you want to allow yourself plenty of time for it. A 5-minute sandwich hug is like heaven on earth. And each person gets to be in the middle, with one person hugging them from in front, one person hugging them from behind. And you relax into that hug and just feel how wonderful it is to feel completely safe and protected by these two other people. This is something that will work directly on your emotional brain. It will release all your internal opioids, your endorphins. It will release all kinds of wonderful hormones, oxytocin, dopamine, all kinds of good feeling hormones, serotonin. And it will completely change your emotional mood and really help you relax and calm down, which is what all of us ex-Christians need, because Christianity is an emotional craziness worldview. It creates anxiety, it creates tension, it creates fear, it creates anger. It's an emotional clusterfuck. Christianity is an emotional clusterfuck. And the sandwich hug is a wonderful way of learning to feel safe in the world. And it's feeling safe realistically, because you're doing it with two other real human beings. It's human beings helping other human beings feel the way that human beings ought to feel. That's a wonderful thing. So anyway, thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you again real soon.